In the mysterious world of steampunk, embark on an extraordinary and exciting life. I am a doctor, I love life and enjoy it. If it weren't for necessity, I wouldn't have wanted to become a knight either. Also known as Simon's Leisure Life, keywords of the novel. Doctors in the world of steampunk without pop-ups, doctors in the world of steampunk. Download the complete set of TXT, and read the latest chapters of Doctors in the World of Steampunk. Chapter 1. Memory. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1 Memory. It is said that all life in the world will eventually lead to death, and the content of life determines the meaning of your journey from birth to death. Everyone chooses a different path on their way back to death, twisted and flat, each with its own scenery. Why is my return journey on the fast lane? It is said that the meaning of life needs to be bestowed upon us. But you have bound me to this cold hospital bed, how can I fulfill the meaning of my life? Since we are going to die, why should we live? Simon gradually woke up from the chaotic thoughts, and the dim faint candlelight reflected in his hazy eyes. Am I not dead yet? Life, why is it so cruel to me? Simon felt sad in his heart, and he worked hard to open his eyes, searching for the only light source in the room. The ancient iron sheet oil lamp was placed on a shabby and dirty low table, and the dim light seeped out from the yellowed glass lampshade, like the dusk of the western mountain. Where is this? This is not my operating room, where am I? Am I dead? It's okay, if I die, my parents won't have to worry about me anymore. Simon had no sense of panic. He had been lying in bed for over 10 years and had received 4 critical notices from the hospital. His heart had already turned to ashes. His last memory is that he was critically ill and was pushed into the operating room. Simon lay quietly on the floor, closing his eyes and looking back on his tragic life. He was only 26 years old and had a rare and terminal illness. He lay in bed for more than 10 years, and the most beautiful youth of his life was spent in a hospital room filled with disinfectant. Looking back on that time, it was unbearable to look back on. The only thing to be grateful for was that his parents did not give up on him, and they always encouraged him. Parents were the only light in his life. Suddenly feeling a bit cold, shouldn't I? How could I feel cold when I die? Opening his eyes again, he looked around the unfamiliar environment, and the dim lights reflected the dilapidated room. There is a musty and slightly sour smell in the air, and if you inhale hard, you can still smell a faint salty rust smell. This is the smell of blood, and he is not unfamiliar with it. I'm not dead. Did I have nosebleeds again? Simon propped his hands on the floor, lifted his upper body with force, and sat on the floor, touching his nose, but there was no bleeding. Suddenly realizing that the clothes on my body were not hospital uniforms. Who exchanged a suit of clothes for me? Did someone kidnap themselves? He is a patient who can easily pass away at any moment, and he is not a wealthy person. Why kidnap him? Did someone take a liking to his organs? I don't know. Does anyone dare to use his organs? Simon repeatedly confirmed whether there were any extra wounds on his body, but did not find any wounds. Simon appeared very calm, not even afraid of death. What else is he afraid of? He quickly surveyed his environment. The room area is not large, and you can see the entire room at a glance. The furniture and furnishings inside are very outdated. The strangest thing is that there was originally a layer of gray-white quilt covering the area where the window was supposed to be, and there were several wooden boards protruding from under the quilt, as if the window had been nailed with wooden boards first, and then covered with a quilt. Obviously, the owner here did not want any natural light to shine into the interior of the room. Even the position of the door was nailed down with wooden boards, covered with messy bed sheets, and a chair was used to support the door, which was to prevent people from entering. It's just that the doors and windows are all sealed. How could he be inside here? Is there any other hidden passage here? His gaze gradually shifted, and then he saw a simple wooden bed with nothing on it. The sheets and blankets were all placed on the window and door. Adjacent to the wooden bed is a row of bookshelves. The bookshelves are not large and are filled with books. The owner of this house is still a studious person. He got up from the ground, wanting to take a closer look at where it was and see if he could get out. He stood up, his mind suddenly feeling a bit drowsy. He knocked on the forehead, and when he lowered his head, he happened to see a strange black and red circular formation where he had just lay, which was somewhat similar to the Western six-pointed star magic formation. What kind of ghost is this? Is it some cult organization using me for the sacrificial ceremony? Do we still have this kind of twisted and evil way in Greater China? He could not help roast, feeling very ridiculous. He glanced at the so-called magic formation and found a fist-sized blue-gray stone on it, which was placed in a circle within the magic formation. He crouched down curiously and grabbed it. With a force, the stone shattered into powder, which was very strange. Simon touched the magic circle on the ground again, his hands stained with some black and red. Upon smelling it, his face changed, and it turned out that the magic circle was drawn with blood. Is it really a sacrificial ceremony of some cult organization? The sealed and dark room, the eerie, magic circle, how to look and how to infiltrate. At this moment, Simon felt a buzzing sound in his mind, feeling dizzy and dizzy. He immediately slammed down on the floor, leaning backwards. A series of strange and unfamiliar memories flashed through my mind like photos. It took him a while to recover, his eyes widened, and his mind was filled with many unfamiliar memories, as if he had personally experienced them. From the mixed memories, Simon quickly conjured up several key pieces of information. The protagonist of this unfamiliar memory is also named Simon, full name Simon Gust, and is an Asian foreigner. What's even more peculiar is that the world he is in is actually the steampunk world in Western fantasy novels. This world is also known as Earth, and its original historical trajectory is no different from the history known to Simon. But history suddenly changed 200 years ago, with a massive meteorite impact event on Earth, which also caused a deviation in history. The impact of meteorites caused a peculiar energy to appear on Earth, which has a powerful pollution ability and can cause genetic mutations in all living beings. Many humans and animals have mutated into irrational monsters that only know how to kill. Human civilization was once on the verge of extinction. Humans refer to this unknown energy as magical energy. There are exceptions to magic pollution, where a small group of people not only do not become monsters due to magic pollution, but also possess various other superpowers. This type of person is called a transcendent. The extraordinary are the main force that humans fought against the pollution monsters of the initial period. Human beings struggled to survive under the attack of pollution monsters, and in the course of history, they initiated the first industrial revolution, with the roaring steam engine entering the long river of history. Relying on the powerful productivity brought about by the steam revolution, various massive steel structures and steam weapons emerged, thus preserving the flame of civilization for humanity. According to Simon's knowledge of historical development, the second industrial revolution will come with it. But to hell, the second industrial revolution only kicked off, and when the stage of electrical technology was just beginning to emerge, this great historical prelude came to a strange end. Perhaps due to magical powers, the steam revolution veered off course in the tumultuous tide of history, and the electrical revolution was short-lived. Are you surprised or angry? The steam revolution kept moving forward, and history took another path, forming a steam civilization that Simon had never seen before. The supernatural beings with magic as their core and the steam civilization with steam as their core are intertwined and evolving, forming the current era. Simon Guters lives in this wonderful world where the technology tree is crooked. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Shadow Ghosts. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2 Shadow Ghosts. The day of the meteorite impact is known as Disaster Day, which serves as a dividing line and marks the beginning of a new era for humanity. The calendar also begins anew, and Disaster Day is also known as the first year of Tyrist. The following century is a cruel history of human struggle against monsters contaminated and mutated by magical powers, with countries falling and civilizations trampled upon, similar to the apocalyptic world. For the continuation of civilization, surviving humans unite to form a community with a shared future for mankind. Collaborating and helping each other, they built one huge city after another, with towering walls and massive steel structures blocking the polluting monsters outside the city. Human history has regressed back to the city-state era. In the next 100 years, the steam industry will move forward, further liberating hands and improving social productivity. Humanity will once again become the hegemon on Earth. After the external pressure is greatly reduced, internal conflicts will inevitably arise. Especially in a community with a shared future for mankind where multiple cultures are intertwined, these cultures are not integrated into one, but rather temporarily let go of conflicts and paranoia under external pressure. When external pressure decreases, these contradictions and paranoia will appear together until they reach the opposite direction. The actual manifestation of cultural conflicts is the continuous intensification of social contradictions, the rapid division of the community with a shared future for mankind, and the formation of one regime after another based on cities. History has further advanced, and national units formed by urban alliances have emerged. Simon Gust's country is a city federation consisting of over 20 cities, known as the White Eagle Free Federal Community. Commonly known as the White Eagle Federation. Within various national units, the extraordinary are most feared by those in power. Domestic supernatural beings are either used by the country or killed. Simon Gust's grandfather was a superhero, and he was a superhero with sequence secrets. The sequence secret method is a kind of inheritance, a secret method for extraordinary practitioners to practice, and can be regarded as a martial arts secret script. It is a path of cultivation that has already been established by our predecessors. As long as we practice according to the sequence secret method, the extraordinary can easily reach higher levels. Transcendental beings without sequence secrets have to explore their own path of cultivation. Transcendental beings are associated with magical energy, which is an extremely dangerous and polluting energy. Most transcendent beings who have not inherited sequence secrets are tainted by magical powers on their journey of exploration, either dying or suddenly transforming into monsters, resulting in a tragic and desolate ending. Sequence secrets often represent a transcendent family, but in Simon's memory, his grandfather did not come from the transcendent family, it was only an accident that created him to become a transcendent identity, and he had an incomplete sequence secret. Simon's grandfather died in battle several decades ago after the patriotic war between the White Eagle Federation and the English Kingdom. Simon's father inherited the remnants of the sequential secrets, but Simon's father did not awaken Simon's extraordinary bloodline. According to the investigation of Simon and his son, if a person in a family becomes a superhero, their descendants carry superhuman genes in their bodies. The superhuman genes are rarely naturally awakened, and the vast majority awaken under environmental and external stimuli. Having extraordinary bloodline does not necessarily mean awakening, and there are also many descendants of extraordinary beings who cannot awaken extraordinary bloodline. If the next generation or offspring do not awaken the extraordinary bloodline will be continuously lost or eliminated in genetics, and the probability of awakening in offspring will become smaller until they are completely eliminated. Simon's father spent his whole life trying to awaken the bloodline of the extraordinary, but unfortunately failed. Eventually, he was contaminated by magic and mysteriously disappeared. Simon's father sealed off sequence secrets and extraordinary information before disappearing, not wanting Simon to follow the same path as him. In my memory, there are more memories of Simon Gust's life and past. Simon was a student at the University of Victoria School of Medicine and was a good student with excellent character and academic performance. Because my girlfriend was pried up by a wealthy second generation and insulted by them, she became depressed. By chance, he discovered a hidden basement in his own home and discovered the sequence secret method sealed by Simon's father, thus embarking on the path of pursuing the extraordinary. In order to become a superhero, he almost reached the level of obsession, constantly searching to read books about the superhero and the mysterious side, and was expelled from Victoria Medical School due to neglect of learning. Victoria University is the only university in the city of Fraser, and uniqueness also represents the best. As long as Simon graduates from Victoria University, he can find a decent job in the city and at least become a middle-class person. In pursuit of transcendence, he gave up a bright future and resolutely embarked on a path of no return. Simon looked at the magic formation on the ground, which was Simon Gust from the sequence formation in the sequence secret law. The object he had previously crushed seemed like a stone, but it was actually a magic mineral. Simon Gust needs external assistance to awaken his extraordinary bloodline, and magical stimulation is essential. He spent a lot of money to buy a magic ore, which was used as an external force to stimulate his extraordinary blood vessels. However, he failed to awaken and died. Next, Simon, who had come through his soul, successfully occupied his body and came back to life. After reading through the memories in his mind, Simon's face showed ecstasy. He quickly got up and found a mirror in the room, in which a pale and emaciated young man with black hair was reflected. It looks more like a long-term drug addict, and Simon Gust does have a history of drug use in his memory. Simon Gust's pursuit of transcendence requires an essential exposure to magical powers. Ordinary people who come into contact with magic energy will be contaminated, leading to physical damage. Simon Gust has a pathological problem caused by magical contamination, and the pain is unbearable every day. He needs to take medication, numb his nerves, and get through the pain. Simon lifted his collar, and there was a large faint black spot on his chest with wrinkles on his skin. Ha! Simon touched the black spot on his chest with a puzzled expression. That's not right. In my memory, the skin affected by this lesion should be as black as ink and show signs of decay. How could it be so superficial without any signs of decay? Simon quickly took off his clothes and revealed his lean and bony body, looking towards his left rib. In his memory, there were also traces of contamination and lesions on his left rib, which were more severe than those on his chest. The skin was darker and had decayed, giving off a foul odor. He usually used spices to cover up the odor. But now the black skin is also light, and the decaying area still exists. Just a closer look reveals that the flesh in the decaying area presents a healthy blood red color, which is completely different from the memory of black flesh and black blood. What exactly is going on? Simon was lost in thought. Is it that the sequence formation is working? He awakened his extraordinary bloodline. Simon Gust's extraordinary bloodline is the Shadow Ghost bloodline. If awakened successfully, the combination of bloodline power and spiritual power gives birth to a Shadow Ghost that can be driven. Is it really the awakening of the Shadow Ghost bloodline? Simon was puzzled, but the special changes in his body could not be explained by anything other than extraordinary. After careful consideration, there is only the possibility of awakening the Shadow Ghost bloodline. If it is really the awakening of the Shadow Ghost bloodline, the power of the bloodline will give birth to a Shadow Ghost. Where is my Shadow Ghost? As he muttered, suddenly, a shadow of his body separated and stood in front of him. Lying trough. What the hell is this? It startled me. Simon retreated to the wall and stared blankly at the shadow in front of him, without realizing it for a moment. The shadow remained silent without any movement. The pitch-black figure, combined with the dimly lit room, does indeed exude a bit. Simon suddenly realized that he was talking about Shadow Ghost just now, and the shadow appeared. Is this the Shadow Ghost? The shadow was the same as his figure and posture. His whole body was as dark as ink, his face was unrecognizable, and his dark eyes were dull. According to Simon Gust's memory description, Shadow Ghosts were born by the combination of the bloodline and spiritual power of Shadow Ghost bloodline superhumans. They share the same energy and roots as Shadow Ghost bloodline superhumans, and Shadow Ghost bloodline superhumans can freely control Shadow Ghosts. Raise your hand. Simon was skeptical and began to probe. The shadow ghost really raised his hand. Simon seemed to have discovered the new world, gathering around the shadow ghosts to explore and explore. The shadow ghost made a variety of strange movements, and Simon finally confirmed that he could indeed control the shadow ghost. He touched the body of the shadow ghost, which was as hard as an iron block. After multiple attempts, it was very hard. If you look closely, you can still see a dark golden metallic luster hidden beneath the pitch black. Simon kept shaking his head and muttering. It shouldn't be, it shouldn't be. He quickly walked towards the bookshelf by the bedside, wanting to move it away, but the bookshelf was heavy, and his thin and weak body could only move out inch by inch. This body is also too weak. Come and move this bookshelf away. Simon asked the shadow ghost to take action. The shadow ghost took 2 steps and grabbed the bookshelf with both hands, easily moving it away. Then, he stood motionless next to it. The power is really great. Simon muttered and walked to the wall behind the bookshelf, where there was an old, half-naked poster of a beautiful woman. He opened the poster and saw a brick wall behind it. Following his memory, he dug out a brick from the wall, which was hollow inside, and took out an old black book from inside. This is Simon Gust's most important wealth, which records the Shadow Ghost sequence secret and the transcripts of Grandpa Simon and Father Simon. He opened the black book and found that the content was recorded in a language similar to English. From this point of view, this Earth star is more like a parallel universe of Earth. Found it. Simon didn't know much English before, but now he has absorbed Simon Gust's memory and he is fluent in English. Reading the above content. It is indeed like this. Shadow ghosts born when their bloodline has just awakened are in their weakest period, and their physical strength is comparable to that of bloodline individuals. Only through the cultivation of magical abilities can shadow ghosts continuously become stronger and their physical strength increase accordingly. Looking at his shadow ghost again, it is clearly vastly different from Grandpa Simon's notes. In theory, the shadow ghost he gave birth to should be consistent with his physical condition. The body of the shadow ghost cannot be so hard, and it cannot be so easy to move the bookshelf. This all indicates that he is an unusual shadow ghost. What exactly caused the abnormal situation of the shadow ghost? At present, the most likely cause is the butterfly effect caused by soul piercing, and he sat on the bedboard trying to think about other possibilities. He really thought of a possibility, which was to use it as a magic mineral to stimulate blood awakening. Simon Gust's last memory was about the abnormal increase in magical power concentration in the sequence formation, which was the true cause of Simon's death. Simon Gust has used the sequence formation more than once and has never experienced such a situation before. The only difference is that the magical items used to stimulate the bloodline are different. He gazed at the powdered magic ore in the sequence formation, which he had purchased from a special channel and carefully observed before use without any peculiarities. After thinking for a while without coming up with any answers, Simon did not continue to entangle himself. If the cause cannot be found, he must determine the consequences and carefully examine whether the abnormality of the shadow ghost is harmful to himself. Seeking collection. Requesting recommended tickets. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. A New Beginning. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. A new beginning. In the dimly lit room, Simon took off his clothes and was naked, holding a slightly tattered round mirror and looking back and forth. He needs to make sure there are no health issues with his body. After a thorough inspection, no issues were found, which relieved me. As for the shadow ghost, he didn't see any problem. The main reason is that Simon Gust's father did not leave many notes, and he was full of mystery and eager to become an extraordinary outsider. Although he has read many books about the mysterious side and the extraordinary in recent years, at most it has expanded his horizons and has not had much practical effect. After a while of drumming, Simon's stomach started growling and he hadn't eaten all day. He was hungry. It's already like this, take one step at a time. Simon is very optimistic that he can live a lifetime again without being discouraged and waiting to die in the hospital bed, which is the greatest blessing for him. Moreover, he has become an extraordinary person, which is even more fortunate. As for the unknown issue of the abnormality of the shadow ghost, he decisively chose to put it aside for the time being. Simon has nothing to eat at home, and he never stops cooking at home. Apart from a pile of books, there is nothing valuable in his family. Simon spent the vast majority of his money to study mystery and pursue transcendence. He usually eats tightly and sometimes goes hungry. Simon flipped out all the money at home, including 2 crumpled yellow eagle banknotes and 7 iron eagle coins, including 4 nickel iron eagle coins. The currency of the Red Eagle Federation is divided into 4 types of paper currency and 2 types of coins. The pattern carved on both paper money and coins is a majestic giant eagle. Paper currency includes a red eagle coin with a face value of 100 yuan, a green eagle coin with a face value of 50 yuan, a yellow eagle coin with a face value of 10 yuan, and a white eagle coin with a face value of 1 yuan. The 2 types of coins are iron eagle coins with a face value of 1 yuan and 5 cents. That means Simon's entire fortune adds up to only 25 yuan. Not an ordinary tragedy. Simon put the money into his pocket, went out for a meal first, and fed his stomach before speaking. He removed the blanket from the window, and a large amount of dust shook out from the blanket, enveloping him like a mist. Pooh, pooh, pooh. Simon quickly dodged and fanned away the dust. How long has this blanket not been washed? In fact, it has never been washed at all. The dazzling light penetrated through the cracks in the wooden board, and the room suddenly became much brighter. Simon blew out the almost burnt butter lamp and then pulled off the bedsheet on the door. The grey bedsheet looked like a cloth. This time, I was shrewd and didn't pull the sheets hard. Throw the sheets and blankets onto the wooden bed without tidying them up, and tidy them up together after finishing dinner. He found a wrench in the room and started prying at the wooden board on the door. The wooden boards were nailed very honestly, and Simon spent a lot of effort to remove 7 or 8 boards. At this level of labor, Simon was panting and sweating profusely, and his physical fitness was really poor. I have made up my mind to exercise well in the future. Before going out, he wiped out the sequence array in the room again, as it could not be discovered by anyone else. I can't wait to open the door and take a deep breath of fresh air, but the so-called fresh air doesn't smell good, with a smell of foul-smelling water. The sky is grey and oppressive. The first thing that came into view were rows of tightly arranged dilapidated houses, and Simon could still see tall and sturdy chimneys towering in the distance, emitting thick black smoke as he gazed into the sky. The main source of energy for the Industrial Revolution was coal resources, and the extensive use of coal inevitably resulted in air pollution. Fossa City is filled with coal smoke all year round, with thick smoke rolling in. Smoke and fog mix together, forming a thick smoke that lingers over the city for years, presenting a dark scene throughout the city. The houses visible in the field of vision also present a black-gray color stained by coal smoke. This is only limited to the outer city area where he is currently located, as well as the worse lower city area. Simon has recently studied at the University of Victoria, and the coal smoke pollution in the inner city area where Victoria University is located is not as severe. There are a total of 4 urban areas in the city of Fossa, each with its own ring. The most central area is the Central District, which is the center of power and wealth in the city of Fossa, and the area where the top elites and billionaires live. At the same time, there is an army stationed there, guarding the security of the central region. It is said that the environment in the Central District is also the best, with fresh air and no pollution problems. Anyway, Simon has never been to the Central District. Afterwards is the inner city area, which is the elite area of the city of Buddha, where elites from all walks of life gather. There are police stations in various areas of the inner city, and there are police patrols at night, which is also very safe. Then there is the outer city area, which can be said to be the civilian area of the city of Fossa, where the majority of the population lives. That is where Simon currently resides. Finally, there is the lower urban area, the slums of the city of Fossa, the most chaotic and disorderly part of Fossa, where gangs are everywhere and there are armed conflicts every day. Dead people are the most normal situation. People living there have to be cautious every day, almost everyone has weapons in their homes, and firearms are rampant. The city of Fossa has a gun ban law, but the gun ban law in the lower part of the city cannot be implemented or prohibited, and the police in Fossa dare not easily enter the lower part of the city to enforce the law. Being able to live to death in the downtown area is a miracle. Simon's living area is the border area between the outer city and the lower district, which is quite chaotic with frequent brawls. Simon has been robbed and extorted by gangsters. The outer and lower urban areas are also industrial areas of the city of Fossa, where factories are everywhere, chimneys stand tall, and smog is severe. A large amount of industrial and domestic wastewater is discharged randomly, and drainage ditches and sewers are all filled with foul-smelling sewage full of chemical odor. The outer and lower urban areas are still garbage bins in the central and inner urban areas, and a large amount of household waste is transported to these two urban areas for treatment every day. There is a famous garbage mountain in the lower urban area, all of which are garbage transported from 3 different districts, piled up like a mountain, with a foul odor. Nevertheless, there are still a large number of people searching for valuable items in this garbage mountain every day. Even a market town has formed around this garbage mountain, relying on it for a living. The most terrifying thing in the outer and lower urban areas is not murder, but disease. Living in places with severe air and water pollution, infectious diseases are the most terrifying killers. Once infected with an infectious disease, residents from other urban areas and lower urban areas have no economic ability to receive treatment and are basically waiting to die. In the nearly century-long history of the city of Fossa, there have been multiple severe cholera outbreaks, resulting in tens of thousands of deaths and quite tragic consequences. This city is really terrible. Or rather, this brand new and backward world is really terrible. But Simon doesn't miss the advanced, convenient, and secure world of the past. Because only in this world can he live healthy. Simon, have you just woken up? At this moment, a rough and wild female voice rang out. Simon looked over and saw a middle-aged woman who was not good-looking, had a chubby physique like a water tank, and looked like a fighting lady. She walked over with a bucket. Her name is Dorian and she is Simon's neighbor. Her whole family is very kind. However, their relationship is not very familiar, it's just a greeting relationship. "Hello Dorian, it's late to wake up today," Simon said with a friendly smile and a hearty smile. Dorian paused in her footsteps and looked at Simon in disbelief. Simon Gust is usually very mysterious, to put it bluntly, he is very gloomy and never takes the initiative to say hello. Usually, Dorian and his wife take the initiative to greet each other, while Simon mostly nods and rarely talks. Simon not only spoke up today, but also smiled so kindly, which made Dorian a bit puzzled. Dorian suspected that Simon was on drugs. Simon realized that his behavior was different from before, smiled, didn't say much, waved his hand to Dorian, and quickly left. Simon smiled all over his face and walked with a gentle breeze. Starting today, he is going to start a new life. Seeking collection. Requesting recommended tickets. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Big Business. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 Big Business. Houston Street is the neighborhood where Simon lives, which is closely connected to the lower city area and has one of the worst security environments in the entire outer city area. There are almost no public facilities on the street, and the road surface is dirt road with garbage everywhere. There are deep-dug drainage ditches on both sides of the road, which are filled with black sewage emitting a foul odor. There is everything in this drainage ditch, and it's not surprising to retrieve a body from it. This is true. Simon had witnessed street residents spontaneously clearing blocked drainage ditches and retrieving severed limbs from them. Some gangsters who kill people will directly stuff their bodies into the drainage ditch, which is naturally blocked by the pitch-black sewage and foul odor. This phenomenon is particularly common in the drainage ditch of the lower urban area. When it rains here, it's the most terrifying time. The rainwater fills the drainage ditch, and the sewage inside will overflow the entire street. The foul smell is unimaginable. Simon followed his memory and found a restaurant on the street. Manning's Dad's Shop. The store name is very casual. The restaurant storefront is very shabby and dirty, with a dirty exterior that is rarely wiped. There are also many bullet hole marks on the sign hanging on the front door. There is a taste that has gone through vicissitudes. Simon pushed open the store door and walked in. It was not time for lunch, and most people were at work. There were only a few idle people in the store. Several diners in the store knew Simon and nodded at him. Simon is the black doctor on Houston Street, and most people on the street know him. On the counter, there was an old man with a white beard and 2 fried dough twists braids on his head, who was carefully wiping the wine glass. This old man's name is Manning and he is the owner of this restaurant. The younger generation calls him Manning's father, and Simon is no exception. Manning's father is a descendant of the Vikings, inheriting their bloodline. Despite being over 70 years old, his body is still strong like a cow, and 2 or 3 big men can never get close. The 2 exposed and sturdy arms were covered in tattoos, quite imposing. It is said that when Manning's father was young, he was a gangster and a gang leader, very cruel. His legendary story still lingers on the streets of Shoning to this day. Simon knew there was a Winchester stick in the dark compartment of the counter, and even the gangsters on the streets of Houston dared not act wildly in front of him. "It's Simon, what do you want to eat?" Manning's father looked at Simon with a smile on his face and a rough and wild voice. "1 pork pancake, 2 more pancakes," Simon smiled. "Lisa, hear me, get ready for Simon quickly," Manning's father shouted towards the kitchen. A crisp female voice responded in the kitchen, and the woman in the kitchen was the granddaughter of Manning's father. "Manning's father has a son, but he died early. I heard it was because Manning's father was killed by a gang and his son and daughter-in-law were dragged to death. It was also because of the tragic death of his son and daughter-in-law that this gang leader washed his hands and started this restaurant." Manning's father held a half-cut cigar in his mouth, brought a wooden medium beer glass, sat next to Simon, and pushed the beer glass in front of him. "Grandpa Manning, I've been financially strapped lately and can't afford beer," Simon said with a wry smile. Manning's father waved his hand and said, "Please have a drink." "Thank you then." Simon happily took a sip of the beer in the glass, which was a bit bitter and not very tasty. This type of beer is brewed from inferior barley and has a poor taste, but it is already very good for people in the outer city and lower market areas. "Simon, do you have a business to do?" asked Manning's father. Manning's father is not only a restaurant owner, but also a broker. He used his previous network to build a messaging platform, selling messages, introducing customers, maintaining neutrality, and engaging in gray business. Simon and Mr. Manning have a cooperative relationship, and Mr. Manning sometimes introduces sick customers to Simon. Of course, Mr. Manning will pay a commission of 20%. Simon put down his glass and hesitated. He inherited the memory of Simon Gust, as well as his medical knowledge and experience, but now Simon is not Peter Simon, and Simon himself is sure if he can do it. "But when I thought of the little money in my pocket, I ate this meal and didn't even find the next one. What else can he do without being a doctor?" At this moment, there was a blonde girl in her 20s, dressed in maid attire. She was not very beautiful, but her figure was excellent and very attractive. She is Lisa, the granddaughter of Manning's father. She came over with a wooden tray, chewing something in her mouth. Simon didn't dare to look too much. There was Manning's father sitting next to him, who was very protective of Lisa. If a guest dares to hit Lisa on a regular basis, Manning's father will definitely use his clay pot-sized fist to greet her. Lisa placed 2 plates of food on the table and quietly left. Simon picked up the pork pancake and started nibbling on it, enjoying it quite deliciously. "I've been running short of money lately, so of course I'll do business." Manning's father whispered, "This business is not easy. Yesterday, there was a war between the Snake Tooth Gang and the 13 Gang in the urban area. The leader of the 13 Gang was seriously injured and is now hiding. The injury was severe, it was a gunshot wound. He asked me to find a reliable doctor for him. The diagnosis fee is 5,000 yuan, which is not low. Can you do it, downtown?" Simon was taken aback. The customers introduced by Manning's father are usually those who have some money. In my memory, he has not given much treatment to the mafia, but they are all in the outer city area. Simon has never been to the lower district, and when he thought about the poor security in the lower district, Simon instinctively wanted to refuse. Upon hearing the diagnosis fee of 5,000 yuan, Simon immediately regained his energy. That's 5,000 eagle coins. Excluding Manning's father's commission, Simon can get 4,000 yuan. Comparing the average annual salary of over 2,000 yuan for ordinary people in the outer city area, it is clear that this is a huge sum of money. "I've done this business, but those 13 gangs won't be taking any action against me, will they?" Simon said hesitantly. "Don't worry about this. Old Manning introduced people to him, and if they dared to make a move, I stomped them." Old Manning's father smiled and patted his chest, giving a strong assurance. Simon sneered at this, and at most, Manning's father can intimidate the gangsters on Houston Street. He can't reach out to the gangsters in the downtown area. Besides, he also has a granddaughter. If something really happens, Simon is sure that Manning's father won't take any risks for him. His true confidence in taking on this business was with Shadow Ghost. Thinking of Shadow Ghost's resilient body, Simon's heart calmed down a bit. "You go back and prepare now, and I'll find someone to take you there," said Manning's father. "Are you in such a hurry? That guy was injured by a gunshot, it's quite serious, it's better early than late." Simon nodded, grabbed the pancakes from his plate, quickly left the restaurant, wolfed them down all the way, and returned home. Close the door and find a leather box from the hidden slot behind the cabinet. This is the guy he eats with, and inside is a set of surgical tools obtained from the University of Victoria. There are many thieves in the outer city area, especially on the streets of Houston. As long as no one is at home, thieves often visit Simon's house, so anything valuable in Simon's house must be carried with him or hidden in a secret place. Simon's home has been stolen at least 16 or 17 times since he first lived here for 6 months. Later, Simon caught up with the line of Manning's father, and under Manning's intimidation, this situation improved to some extent. Simon confirmed the items in the leather bag, touched these surgical tools, and there was no sense of unfamiliarity when holding them. He was also familiar with the efficacy and taboos of various drugs, and felt at ease in his heart. He locked the doors and windows tightly, and a black shadow drifted out of his body. The Shadow Ghost stood in front of him in an orderly manner, and he patted the Shadow Ghost's solid arm. "Brother, whether you can make a fortune this time depends on you. Seeking collection. Requesting recommended tickets." End of this chapter. Chapter 5. The Way to Survival. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. The Way to Survival. Simon carried the suitcase on his back, with a worn gray-black windbreaker covering it slightly. I took out another dagger that was 15 or 16 centimeters long from home and tied it around my waist, then left satisfied. Arriving at Mr. Manning's restaurant, Mr. Manning stood behind the counter and was conversing with a sturdy middle-aged black man. Simon walked over and the middle-aged black man greeted with a smile, "Dr. Simon, long time no see." "Hello, Mr. York," Simon responded politely. His name is York and he comes from the lower city area. He used to work in gangs, but later he was saved by Manning's father and worked under him. He has dealt with the little thugs who caused him trouble for Simon and is very skilled. Did Mr. York lead me the way? Then I can rest assured. Manning's father looked at Simon and said, "Have you brought everything?" Simon patted the suitcase under the windbreaker and said, "It's all set, no problem. York will lead you the way, and after handling it, he will bring you back safely." Manning's father nodded. After finishing his beer in his glass, York stood up and said, "Let's go now while it's still dark." Simon nodded and greeted Manning's father before following York out of the restaurant. York was a silent person, and Simon didn't know what to say. The two of them remained silent all the way and quickly arrived at an extremely dilapidated residential area. The road was overgrown with weeds on both sides, and the courtyard was also overgrown with weeds, as if no one had lived in it for a long time. There is a cross-shaped signpost on the roadside, with a skull and sheep head inserted at the top of the signpost. The signpost points to the road ahead, with unknown blood written on it, "To Hell." Next to the road signs and signs, there are many signs written in various languages, some are warnings, and some are even billboards recruiting gangsters. This is the end of Houston Street, and further on, you will reach the lower city area. Occasionally, people peek out from the dilapidated houses on both sides, watching stealthily. This residential area is adjacent to the downtown area, and there are often hooligans from the downtown area who come to cause trouble. The civilians in this area cannot bear the disturbance and move away, and no one dares to settle here. Over time, it became a shelter for homeless wanderers and drug addicts. Follow behind me, don't look around, just walk normally. I've been to the downtown area not once or twice, you can rest assured to follow me. York looked a bit serious and turned around to warn Simon. Simon nodded earnestly and took a deep breath. "I am a transcendent, I have a shadow ghost, I am afraid of a feather." Continuously boosting oneself in the heart. The two walked along the direction of the sign for about 100 meters before the houses on both sides became lively. Simon saw several children playing happily in a courtyard. After seeing Simon and his wife, the child scattered like a mouse seeing a cat and ran into the house, closing the doors and windows tightly. On the way, I also met several idle young people squatting in the corner, smoking cigarettes and holding beer in their hands, with malicious eyes swirling around Simon and the others. Simon clearly felt that there were more eyes fixed on him. Perhaps it's because he looks more easily bullied. But they seemed intimidated by the strong York, just watching Simon leave. On the way, I also met several young people playing with a decadent homeless man. Don't meddle in your own affairs, there are so many of these things that you can't handle. That homeless man looks like he's drug addicts and not worth it, York said expressionlessly as he pulled Simon forward. York took Simon into the residential area of the lower city and walked back and forth in the alleys. The alleys here were even dirtier, with sewage everywhere and accidentally stepping on a pile of feces. In the alley, I saw men and women passionately kissing, women who had stumbled attracting bees and butterflies, arguments and scolding, and children playing and frolicking. It's all sorts of strange. At the corner of a small alley, York suddenly accelerated and passed through a house. "Someone is tracking us, it should be from the Snake Fong gang," York explained calmly to Simon. "The people of the Snake Fong gang are not fools. If they know that the leader of the 13 gang has been shot, they will definitely seek help from a doctor. This area should have been blocked by the Snake Fong gang's people, and there are dedicated people watching the streets of Houston. If you know someone is watching, why do you come over so openly during the day?" Simon asked suspiciously. "At night, it's even more dangerous. The night in the downtown area is hell. Wanderers, addicts, and gang thugs wander at night like ghosts. The probability of homicide occurring at night is dozens of times higher than during the day," York said seriously. "And during this period, there are unclean things in the downtown area, which are very dangerous," said Lynn York. "Unclean things." Simon was taken aback, for the unclean thing in York's mouth was definitely not referring to people. Is it a pollution monster? There have been pollution monster incidents before, and there are all kinds of people in this city. There are people like Simon who pursue the mysterious side. Without the help of professionals, it is easy to be contaminated by magic, as Simon himself is an example. Some people who suffer from severe magic pollution will transform into monsters, and similar incidents have occurred in the lower and outer urban areas. What impressed Simon the most was that during his time studying at the University of Victoria, a pollution monster incident occurred in the inner city area, causing dozens of people to die and causing a stir. Simon asked York, and York said he wasn't quite sure either. I knew there were several homeless people in the lower area who died tragically, and their bodies seemed to have been bitten by some kind of animal. The news he received was that the bite marks on the body came from humans. Is it a Death Eater with a special hobby or a pollution monster? There is currently no consensus. However, from York's expression, it can be seen that he is more inclined towards polluting monsters. York didn't say much further and continued walking with Simon. The two of them wandered through the streets and came to an even older neighborhood. It's dusk now, but the streets and alleys here are even darker. York arrived at the door of a house and began knocking. The knocking sound was very regular, probably a secret signal. The door opened, a crack opened, and a pair of alert eyes appeared first. The person inside the door said, "Who are you looking for?" "The flag of the Vikings guides me," York whispered. This is Old Manning's secret language, and this sentence represents Old Manning. "Come on in." The door opened, and York entered first, followed closely by Simon. The person who opened the door was a middle-aged man of medium height, with a dirty face and traces of black coal ash. If it weren't for a machete over 30 centimeters long in his hand, Simon would have believed he was just an ordinary coal worker. The middle-aged man glanced at Simon and, under York's instructions, Simon lifted his windbreaker to reveal the suitcase inside. He then opened the suitcase to reveal the medical supplies inside. Only then did the middle-aged man lead the way. The three of them walked through the dim room and entered another alley through the back door, asking them to wait here for a moment. The middle-aged man walked alone into the darkness. "This is too cautious, it's like a spy mission," Simon said in silence. To live in the lower end, one must have more ulterior motives than others. If one cannot play with others, they will be played to death by others, especially those who work in gangs and are not vigilant. York said calmly. Simon shrugged as he had just arrived in this world and had not yet truly entered, unsure of the way to survive in this world. About 2 minutes later, the middle-aged man returned and beckoned the two of them to walk forward. Leading the way into a household, as soon as the two of them entered, the door was immediately closed. A black muzzle pointed at 2 people. 3 people quickly walked out from behind the door and gathered around. Another person held a gun, while the other 2 held knives and pressed against Simon. At this moment, Simon had some regrets. This is too dangerous, isn't it? Almost calling out the shadow ghost, as York decisively raised his hands, he immediately followed suit. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Money is hard to earn. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Money is hard to earn. 2 flames gradually lit up in the dimly lit room, and a fierce and malevolent inch-headed man carried 2 tin oil lamps and hung them on the wall, illuminating the room even brighter. Simon finally saw the situation in the room. "Pippin, Father Manning asked me to bring you the doctor you need." York knew the big man in front of him. The inch-headed man remained expressionless and didn't answer. He gave the man with the knife a glance, and the 2 men with the knife immediately began searching. They took off Simon's dagger from his waist and checked his suitcase. York also found a revolver and a tiger-toothed dagger on his body. "We need to keep these things for now, and they will be returned to you when you leave," said the big man with an inch in his mouth. York shrugged his shoulders, as if accustomed to it. "Come with me," the hunchback waved to York, who asked Simon to follow. The middle-aged man with a cold face who had previously pointed Simon's way quickly left the room, with another person following him. The others leaned against the corner window, silently eating, their eyes occasionally glancing out the pitch-black window. They arrived at the door of a room, and the big man with an inch opened the door, emitting a strong smell of smoke. Simon naturally shrugged his nose, frowned slightly, and smelled a strong, tingling smell in the smoke. The room is not big, it can only accommodate a bed and a sofa. Simon saw a middle-aged man half paralyzed on the sofa, naked in his upper body, with a strip of cloth tied to his thighs that should have been torn off from the bed sheet. The strip was filled with blood and was still oozing at the moment. The middle-aged man has a bald head, deep blue eyes, and a sinister gaze. There is a layer of fine sweat on his forehead, and he is holding back the pain. Holding a half-burned gray cigarette in his mouth, he occasionally sucked and exhaled large amounts of smoke. Under his feet were cigarette butts all over the ground. Simon estimated that this was a cigarette mixed with big hemp, and he was using big hemp to relieve the pain. What are you looking at? Hurry up and treat my big brother. If you can't cure my big brother, I need you to bury him with me. The big man with an inch head looked fiercely at Simon, holding a pistol against his head and pushing him over. Pippin, don't treat our guests so rudely, the man said weakly. Pippin, a big man with an inch head, has been looking at Simon with a cold gaze. If something really happens, maybe Simon doesn't have to walk out alive. York stood by the wall, silent. Simon's face was full of helplessness. The salary was high, but it didn't seem easy to earn. Simon bravely walked over. Can I take a look at the wound? Sure, you can do it yourself, the man nodded. Simon opened the suitcase, took out surgical scissors from inside, and carefully cut open the bedsheet bandage on the man's body. The bedsheet bandage had already adhered to the wound, and with a little force, it pulled on the wound. The painful man's mouth trembled and he kept sucking on his cigarette. Be careful, didn't you see that my big brother can't bear the pain? Pai Ping took 2 steps and angrily cursed. The cold muzzle pressed against the back of his head, and Simon's face was very ugly. At this moment, Simon regretted it very much. These people were all fugitives, why did they blindly take this order? Pippin, please shut up for me. Is he a doctor or are you a doctor? The man scolded angrily. Pai Ping pursed his mouth and withdrew, forcing a smile on the man's face. Don't be afraid, you can treat with peace of mind. Whether it's good or bad, I will pay. Simon nodded expressionlessly. He didn't think so in his heart. Once this black tycoon died, Pippin behind him would probably kill him as soon as possible. He had already made a decision in his heart and would take the initiative to act if he found something wrong. He has the unique card Shadow Ghost, and if he uses it well, he may not be able to kill back. Simon pulled off the bedsheets and bandages, and there were 3 gunshot wounds on the black man's body, all of which were very large. Judging from the condition of the wounds, it seemed that they had already been treated. Did the bullet come out? I took out bullets from my shoulders and thighs, but the bullets from my abdomen went deep and I didn't dare to take them, Pippin replied on behalf of the black boss. Simon carefully examined 3 wounds. Although the wounds on his shoulders and thighs were severe but not fatal, the wounds on his abdomen were very serious and deadly. Inflammation has appeared at the wound, with blood and pus. He touched the forehead of the black tycoon and felt a little feverish. It's already a miracle that this black boss can survive until now. Do you feel it? Simon pressed down on the wound in his abdomen and asked. Yes, it's not very painful. He continued to press on several areas of the wound. Simon frowned, and the black man drank a large amount of numbness, possibly numbing his nerves. So he couldn't try to determine if the nerves near the wound were necrotic. Simon took out 2 syringes and 2 small bottles from the suitcase. I'll give you a sedative first, then inject the anesthetic, and start the surgery immediately. If you feel any pain, you should hold it back and bite something in your mouth. Don't worry, I can't bear this pain, the black boss smiled. Bring the oil lamp over to light up, take more, Simon turned to Pippin. Pippin opened the door and gave orders to the people outside, and immediately brought 3 oil lamps. After injecting sedatives and anesthetics, Simon carefully disinfected Pippin's wound with medical alcohol, disinfected the surgical knife, and then began the surgery. Just hold on and don't move. York carried an oil lamp to illuminate the wound. Can you help me by the side? If the boss can't help it, help me control it, Simon turned to Pippin. The bullet entered deeply, and Simon was worried that the bullet would land on his liver. If that's the case, he can't solve it at all. Fortunately, the bullet only landed next to the liver, only a few centimeters away. The surgery was very difficult, and Simon's forehead was sweating. It took him 20 minutes to remove the bullet, and Simon breathed a sigh of relief. Gunshot wounds belong to pollution injuries, and the most troublesome one is infection. He carefully cleaned the wound, sutured it, and bandaged it. The entire surgical process took an hour. The other 2 wounds do not require bullet extraction and are not deeply penetrated, making them more convenient to handle. The wound has been treated, and if there are no accidents, your life is saved. This is anti-inflammatory medicine, remember to take it. Simon took out a bottle of anti-inflammatory medicine from his suitcase and advised. At this moment, the black boss was even weaker, propping up his spirit and nodding slightly, thank you. This kind of smoke can't be smoked anymore, it's not good for recovery. The black boss threw away the cigarette he picked up. I need to get my share of the payment and then leave here. The black boss looked at Pippin. Pippin took out a bag from the wardrobe in the room and grabbed 5 rolls of Red Eagle banknotes, each roll being 1,000 and a penny. You can't leave tonight, Pippin said calmly. Simon frowned. The surgery has just been completed, and I'm worried about my elder brother's comfort. If there are any problems, you can handle them in a timely manner. Moreover, it's not safe to walk at night in the downtown area recently. Pippin's tone was not so cold, but it still showed no doubt. Simon looked at York, who nodded. Let's take a night off here tonight. My brothers have also suffered some knife wounds. Could you please treat them? I'll give you another 1,000 yuan as compensation, said the black boss. Pippin threw a roll of Red Eagle coins to Simon. Okay, he knows he won't be able to leave tonight. Seeking collection, seeking recommended tickets. Request all support. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Ghouls. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Ghouls. Outside the living room, Pippin brought several other big men over one by one to show Simon their injuries. Everyone was injured, all with knife wounds, and some were quite serious. They simply bandaged and stopped the bleeding. It has to be said that these people have really good physical fitness. Simon treated them and sutured the wound. After handling the matter, Pippin prepared some food for them, just bread, bacon, and water, and the others ate the same. They are here to avoid disasters, and some of their food is already good. After finishing, Simon and York were arranged in a very small room, more like a miscellaneous room. Inside lay a blackened bedding with dents on it. Previously, it should have been Pippin and the others living there. The conditions are limited, let's just make do for one night, Pippin said expressionlessly. This house itself is not big, the environment is simple, and there are no extravagant expectations for a place to live. I haven't slept anywhere before, it's nothing, York replied with a smile on his face. That's good. Pippin turned around and left. The 2 of them tidied up the bedding. The surgery had taken a lot of effort just now, and now they are lying down feeling drowsy. York lay against the side of the door, against the wall, with his ears listening to the wall as if he was on guard against Pippin and his group. In a daze, Simon woke up and his bleary eyes saw York standing beside the door, full of seriousness. "York, what happened?" Simon got up. "There was a noise outside the room just now," York said in a deep voice. Pippin and the others were nervously staring out the window, and Simon's expression tightened as he said, "It's not like the Blood Teeth gang found this place, is it?" "I'm not sure," York shook his head. After a few minutes, Simon vaguely heard a mournful scream, which briefly disappeared. "Make their hearts even tighter." There was a more blurry roar, which didn't sound like a human. "York, did you hear anything?" Simon quickly asked. "A scream of agony." "Besides the screams, have you heard a strange roar?" "No, did you hear me?" York pursued. "It seems like I heard it, but I'm not sure. Maybe I just woke up and my head wasn't clear yet." Simon didn't know if he had heard it wrong. "You heard me right, something unclean passed by just now." Pippin walked over and heard the conversation between the two. "Unclean things." Both of them were surprised. "My brother saw a black shadow passing by the window, not like a person. It should have been some unlucky guy it met just now, and it became its food," Pippin said in a deep voice. "Is there really a pollution monster?" Simon asked curiously. "I have seen it before. I have killed it before." Pippin and York spoke at the same time, confirming Simon's question. Just Simon didn't know that York had actually killed the pollution monster. "Just participating, fired a few shots," York said with a bitter smile as the two of them watched. "That's not bad, but unfortunately I only saw it once when I was young, and I was too scared to move at the time. If I were to encounter it now, I would definitely shoot a few shots," Pippin said with a little anticipation in his eyes, and then shook his head. "It's better not to encounter it now. Where is the restroom?" "I'll go use the restroom," Simon said. "I'll take you over," Pippin guided Simon. A very small room with a squatting pit inside, very dirty. Having a squat pit would be great, as many families in the outer city area do not have independent toilets, usually using toilets or similar facilities, let alone in the lower urban areas. Simon closed the door, locked it, pushed open the ventilation window, and a ghost split out of his body. The ghost jumped out with a whoosh. "Close the window, pretend to be using the restroom, and then leave the restroom." There was a man guarding outside the restroom. After Simon came out, the man pretended to leave unintentionally. After Simon entered his small room, the man even went to the restroom to take a look. Simon lay on the blanket, leaning against the wall and pretending to sleep. York didn't sleep, obviously worried about polluting the monster. Simon closed his eyes, but in reality, he was controlling the shadow ghost. He shares the same heart as the shadow ghost, just like a clone. The pitch-black ghost quickly passed through the dim alley, and Simon was curious about the pollution monster. He wanted to see it with his own eyes. "Following the screams I heard earlier, I chased after the shadow ghost all the way, but couldn't find any trace. It should have run away. After passing through several alleys, I still haven't found any pollution monsters." Under the pale moonlight, Simon discovered a long puddle of blood on the ground. Only when the injured person is dragged on the ground can this blood mark form. The bloodstains extended along the alley and disappeared at the corner. The previous alley was too dark, so no bloodstains were found. Simon took a deep breath, with a hint of nervousness and anticipation in his eyes, and finally he could see the real pollution monster. He walked forward along the bloodstains and turned the alley. The alley ahead was pitch black and no blood was visible. He continued to walk forward and found new bloodstains at the corner. After passing through several alleys, Simon was at the end of a dead end, where garbage was piled up. He heard strange noises of snoring, as well as what seemed to be biting and chewing. Simon walked cautiously forward, silently walking through the garbage dump and saw a person squatting in the corner of the wall. He is wearing a gray work uniform, so he should be a worker. Lowering his head, holding something in both hands, constantly tearing and chewing. Like a homeless person who has been hungry for a long time, searching for food in the garbage dump. He leaned forward and, under the pale moonlight, he could see the scene before him clearly. This person, let's say it's a human. There was a person lying in front of him, dressed as a homeless man, with his stomach dug open and large internal organs and large intestines flipped out, extremely disgusting. The homeless man's hand held in his hand was desperately biting. Simon was startled and took a few steps back, knocking down the trash can. In the room, Simon suddenly opened his eyes, his face looked ugly, his stomach churned with nausea, and he was about to vomit. "Are you okay?" York frowned and looked at Simon. Simon waved his hand and said, "I'm fine, but I'm a bit uncomfortable. Maybe I have diarrhea, just take a break." Simon quickly lay down and contacted the shadow ghost. The person was startled by the noise and looked up to see the shadow ghost. A pair of pale green eyes flickered with a captivating ferocity, and his face covered in black spots was full of ferocity. He bared his teeth like canine teeth, and at this moment, he could clearly see the fresh blood-red flesh in the gaps between his teeth, as well as the sticky dripping blood. This is not a person, this is a person who has been contaminated by magic, and now it is a polluting monster. Simon recalled some mysterious side stories he had seen over the years, which recorded many bizarre stories and pollution monsters. Poor green eyes, resembling humans, canine teeth, eating human flesh. This should be a ghoul. Just as Simon identified the identity of the polluting monster, the ghoul suddenly moved. His movements were sharp and agile, like a fierce dog pouncing on the shadow ghost and knocking it down. Biting into the neck of the shadow ghost with a click, the neck of the shadow ghost was not bitten open, but instead broke several canine teeth of the corpse ghost. Simon reacted from his daze, took control of the shadow ghost, grabbed its hair, pulled it off its body, and kicked it several meters away. The ghoul roared and roared at the shadow ghost in even greater anger, and once again charged forward. The tenacious body of the shadow ghost greatly boosted Simon's confidence. As the ghoul rushed forward, he suddenly reached out and first squeezed the ghoul's neck. The ghoul waved his hands, his fingers sharp, and pulled the shadow ghost's arm, leaving marks one after another. Simon swung his fist and hit the ghoul on the head. With a loud bang, the ghoul's entire face sank in, his head drooped, and he died on the spot. Simon was surprised and a bit messy. "Release your palm," the ghoul limps to the ground. Is the ghoul so weak? It shouldn't be. Ghouls are monsters with magical power pollution, their bodies mutate, and their strength and speed are abnormal. How could a powerful ghoul be so easily killed without even being able to penetrate? Is it because Shadow Ghost is too strong? Simon endured nausea and carefully observed the ghoul, discovering the problem. Many parts of this ghoul's body have not been affected yet, so it is likely that it has just mutated. Simon's Shadow Ghost is also a monster, with strong defense and extraordinary strength. One strong and one weak, the ghoul was easily killed. Originally, I only witnessed the pollution monster with my own eyes, but I didn't expect to be able to kill one. Simon shook his head, and the Shadow Ghost made his first move, demonstrating a powerful combat power that made Simon very happy in his heart. "I've seen it before, let's go back." Simon was about to leave, but the Shadow Ghost grabbed the ghoul's head and saw strands of black air emanating from its body. Magic power. That's right, it is indeed magical power. The Shadow Ghost opened its mouth and sucked in the black chi, which immediately penetrated into the Shadow Ghost's mouth and was eaten. Then Simon felt the Shadow Ghost's body strengthen. Eating magic energy. Simon was shocked and turned pale. Eating something like magic can cause trouble. Seeking collection. Requesting recommended tickets. Request all support. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Old Ethan. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Old Ethan. The sudden action of the Shadow Ghost left Simon somewhat bewildered. What was even more surprising was that he used an unknown method to extract the magical energy from the body of the ghoul and even ate it. To be honest, Simon is really a bit confused at the moment. Then I'm worried, what it eats is magic power. Can that thing be eaten casually? He shares the same root cause as Shadow Ghost, and he is really worried that he may have problems. What exactly is going on? The Shadow Ghost should be under his control. Why would the Shadow Ghost take action on its own? Does Shadow Ghost have autonomous consciousness? This is too absurd. The abnormal behavior of the Shadow Ghost made Simon feel a hint of fear. He tried to find the problem, but he couldn't find the answer at all. Finally, he could only leave with a dejected expression. Simon went to the restroom again under the pretext of having diarrhea, and the ghost crawled in through the window. Staring at the quiet standing ghost with complex eyes. "Who are you?" Simon whispered softly with a hint of caution. The Shadow Ghost stood motionless without any change. Simon walked back and forth in the bathroom, feeling helpless, wondering whether to take the ghost inside. Shadow Ghost just ate magic energy. If it were taken back from his body, would the magic energy contaminate his body? This can be life-threatening. As Simon hesitated, Pippin's voice came from outside the door. "Simon, are you okay?" "I'm fine," Simon quickly replied. "How are you?" "I also need to use the restroom." "I'm ready, just a moment." Simon stayed in the restroom for a long time, but Pippin had some doubts. Simon looked at the Shadow Ghost and gritted his teeth, saying, "It's a blessing or not a disaster." "It's a disaster that can't be avoided, just die." The Shadow Ghost walked towards Simon and integrated into his body. Simon pretended to have just finished using the restroom and walked out. Pippin could only be outside, his gaze fixed on the toilet, his gaze suspicious as he looked at Simon. Simon tried to stay calm and said, "I thought it was diarrhea, but I squatted for a long time and didn't have anything. You go to the bathroom, I'll go rest first." Without looking back, he entered the room to rest and didn't fall asleep immediately after lying down. His mind was very restless, and it turned out to be about ghosts and shadows. In the morning, it's just dawn. York still called him up, and Simon examined the wound of the black man. It was a bit purulent, and there was no problem. He made some adjustments. Then, after examining the wounds of others and finding no problem, York left with Simon. I safely returned to Houston Street and went to Manning's father's restaurant first. It was already breakfast time and there were few people in the shop. As usual, Manning's father sat behind the counter, wiping his glasses. "Simon, you don't look very well," old Manning joked with a smile. Simon awkwardly squeezed out a smile. He was currently preoccupied and still worried about the ghost issue. "Follow me." Old Manning walked out of the counter and led Simon into the restaurant's lounge. "Lisa, I want 2 pork rolls," Simon shouted towards the kitchen. He treated the black boss for a fee of 5,000 yuan. He also treated several of his subordinates for over 1,000 yuan, with a total fee of 6,000 yuan, which is commission. Simon took out a roll of Red Eagle coins and then handed 2 more to Old Manning as commission. Old Manning only received 1 roll of Red Eagle coins and handed back 2 Red Eagle coins to Simon. "I just introduced you to one business, the other one is not something I introduced to you, so I won't take the commission." "Okay, I'm facing financial difficulties now, so I'm not polite." Simon put 200 yuan into his pocket. Old Manning drew a commission of 1,000 yuan, which was also very enjoyable. "Take out 2 cigars from the counter, throw one to York and the other to Simon. Please draw." "Humph, this Donji brand cigar costs about 20 yuan. "Manning, you're such a luxury." "I'm not polite." Simon had never smoked a cigar before, and he really wanted to give it a try. He lit the cigar happily, took a sip, and choked himself. "Haha, cigars are not cigarettes. You can't smoke them in big gulps, take small sips, and savor them slowly. Manning's father demonstrated to him, enjoying himself with a smile on his face. Simon gradually grasped the essentials and the smoking was pretty good. Simon had never smoked a cigar together, and he always felt that smoking a cigar was very stylish. How to put it, it's a kind of forced grid. For example, when Manning's father smokes cigars, he has a big shot style, very imposing and domineering. Probably because cigars are much thicker than regular cigarettes, and the thicker things are naturally extraordinary, Simon muttered in his heart. At this moment, Lisa brought in 2 pieces of pork rolls, and Simon paid and took the pork rolls. "Father Manning, I have something else to do, let's go first." Simon was eating pork rolls in one hand and holding a cigar in the other, looking out of place. Simon didn't go home. The abnormal behavior of the ghost last night made him uneasy, and he had to find a way to solve it. Passing through 2 blocks, I found a secluded alley. There is an inconspicuous small shop in the alley. The sign reads Ethan Antique Shop. Simon walked in and a spirited white man next to the store counter was wiping away the antiques displayed on the counter. "Good morning, Dr. Simon," the young man greeted with a smile on his face. "Good morning, Jacques. Where's old Ethan?" Simon asked. "The boss is organizing things inside, I'll go call the boss." Jacques pointed to the inner room and quickly walked towards it. Simon stood in the shop, gazing at the displayed antiques, jade and porcelain, ancient paintings and masterpieces, weapon bones and blades, and everything. Simon knew that most of the antiques here were fake, and some were genuine, but their origins were not legitimate, and some were even burial objects. On the surface, this is an antique shop, but secretly it is a black shop selling prohibited items. As long as you can afford money, you can get things that are explicitly prohibited in the market, such as weapons and medicines, here. Simon works as a black doctor in Houston Street and requires various medications, especially anti-inflammatory drugs. He doesn't have a doctor's license, so he can't buy from legitimate channels. Old Manning recommended this store to him, and all his medicines were bought from here. Not only that, he also bought the magic items he needed earlier from here. Anyway, the owner of this store is very versatile. In no time, an old man wearing a tailcoat, holding a cane, dressed like a gentleman, walked over with a smile on his face. "Mr. Simon, we haven't seen each other for a while." Old Ethan showed great enthusiasm. This old man is the owner of this antique shop, and others call him Old Ethan. Simon found that many shops here are named after their owners, and he doesn't know if they are lazy or lack sufficient culture. "What do you need this time?" "I have a lot of goods in here." "What am I doing here if I don't buy anything?" Upon hearing this, old Ethan's face lit up with a smile. "Before that, let me ask you a question. You say, where did you get the magic ore I sold to you last time?" Simon asked. "This can't tell you," old Ethan shrugged. "I'll give you 50 yuan, how about that?" Simon knew that old Ethan, despite his gentlemanly demeanor, was someone who values money as his life. In order to investigate whether the abnormality of the shadow ghost was related to magic energy minerals, spending some money to break some wealth doesn't matter. Old Ethan rubbed his hands, pondered slightly, and said with a smile, 100 yuan, I'll tell you. Okay, just 100 yuan. Simon quickly pulled out a red eagle coin and handed it to old Ethan. Just as old Ethan was about to take it, Simon immediately pulled it back and said, "Don't fool me with fake news." "Don't worry, what kind of character is old Ethan? Doing business requires sincerity and I won't deceive you." "Those who believe you are really stupid," Simon muttered to himself. Old Ethan took the red eagle coin, happily flipped through it, and put it into his pocket. "The magic ore you bought last time was sold to me by a local mouse. The Earth Mouse refers to tomb raiders, and one of old Ethan's channels is through the Earth Mouse, so his store has a lot of burial items." Old Ethan looked up at Simon, hesitated for a moment, and said, "Friendly reminder, it's best to throw away that magic ore. Why? Simon frowned and asked. It's unlucky, after all, it's something underground. Old Ethan shrugged. Simon's brow furrowed even more, which was a terrible reason. Old Ethan's burial items in his store were neither 100 nor 80, and he never lost them. Old Ethan, there's a problem with that magic ore, right? I didn't say anything, I just thought it was unlucky. I'll tell you, everything sold in my store won't be returned, Old Ethan fooled. Old Ethan, there are also quite a few burial items in your store. If you're afraid of bad luck, why do you keep them anyway? I reminded you, you can decide what to do on your own. Old Ethan waved his hand. Simon still wanted to spend money to buy answers, but Old Ethan was unwilling to answer. The more he didn't answer, the more Simon felt that there was a hidden truth, and even a possible reason for the abnormality of the shadow ghost. If you don't buy anything, just leave quickly and don't delay my business. Old Ethan was a bit impatient and prepared to drive someone away. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Boning Python. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 Boning Python. Old Ethan, this doesn't seem like your style. The old Ethan I know never drives away guests. Shimon smiled and recognized in his heart that the magic ore was unusual. He wanted to figure out the origin of the magic ore. Of course I welcome you to buy something. But you have too many questions, Old Ethan said with a displeased expression. Alright, I won't ask any more. I need 3 bottles of anti-inflammatory drugs, 3 packs of suture, 2 bottles of sedatives, and 4 bottles of anesthetics. I also need 2 bottles of crow blood and a magic item. Simon reported what he needed. Ho 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 ho, there's a lot of things. Simon, have you been rich lately? Old Ethan's old face immediately showed a smile, and he waved his hand at Jock, asking him to stay away. Let's go, enter the lounge. Old Ethan greeted Simon into a small lounge in the store, where prohibited items were not visible and could not be traded outside. Jock, go pour some tea and use high-quality black tea. When I came last time, you only served me regular black tea, so the difference was obvious, right? Old Ethan chuckled and said, can it be the same? Last time you only bought something for 100 yuan, but this time I roughly calculated that it's almost 2,000. Can it be the same? Oh, no wonder your old business is doing so well. Simon was speechless. Jacques came in with 2 cups of tea and closed the door. Let me think, anti-inflammatory drugs, sedatives, anesthetics, sutures, I have ready-made ones here. I also have a few magic items, but the crow blood is gone. If you want it, it will take 2 days, Old Ethan quickly confirmed. The blood of descendants of Shadow Warcraft can be used, but it would be even better if it was Warcraft's blood. The Warcraft here refers to a new species formed over time by the sedimentation of plants and animals contaminated with magic 200 years ago. Each Warcraft possesses powerful abilities, similar to the superhumans of humans. The crow is a descendant of Shadow Warcraft, equivalent to a descendant of a superhero who has not awakened his extraordinary bloodline. Its blood is used to draw the array of sequences. The sequence secret in his hand belongs to a mixed type of shadow and spirit secret. The sequence array drawn with shadow and spirit-based Warcraft blood has the best effect. Warcraft blood, are you sure? Even the worst Warcraft costs 10,000 eagle coins per bottle of blood. I can't afford it, Simon sneered. Old Ethan knew the expression on his face and continued, the blood demand for Shadow Warcraft descendants is relatively low, and I don't have any inventory here. If you want it, pay a deposit first, and I'll find it for you. Wait at least 2 days. Simon nodded, not short of these 2 days of hard work. You wait here, I'll go get something now. Old Ethan left alone to retrieve things. Simon sat on the sofa, leisurely drinking tea. A few minutes later, Old Ethan walked in holding a small box. Simon helped close the door, and old Ethan placed the box on the table. He opened the small box and found the medical supplies he needed inside. Simon checked it and confirmed that there were no problems. Let's go and see some magical items. Magic energy items carry magic energy, and insufficient safety measures can lead to magic energy leakage, which is very dangerous. Old Ethan left the lounge with Simon and followed a wooden staircase into a basement. The basement entrance is an iron door, completely sealed. There is an iron cabinet by the door. Old Ethan took out 2 white clothes from the iron cabinet that looked like fire rescue suits, with gas masks on top. Hands Simon a piece, Simon puts it on. After old Ethan puts on his clothes, old Ethan lights an oil lamp, opens the iron door, and walks in. Hang the oil lamp and light up the basement. The basement is very small, only 2 or 3 square meters, and there is a cabinet inside. Old Ethan opened the cabinet and took out an old wooden box. Inside, there were 5 items separated by glass covers. These 5 items are magical items, and the protective clothing they wear can isolate magical energy and prevent their bodies from being contaminated by magical energy. Old Ethan took out a small compass-shaped object from his pocket, and upon seeing it, Simon's eyes lit up. Old Ethan took out a magic orb from the box and placed the compass object in his hand against it. The pointer on the compass began to rotate and landed at the position of scale 1. This compass is a portable magic meter that can measure the concentration of magic energy. This is a product from the White Eagle Federal Academy of Sciences, costing 50,000 Eagle coins per piece, which is more than 10 times higher on the black market. After approaching the magical object, the compass rotates, and the scale on it represents the concentration of magical energy. The scale 1 indicates that the magic energy concentration is level 1. The portable magic power measuring compass in old Ethan's hand has a total scale of 10, and can only calculate 10 levels of magic power concentration. This portable measuring device belongs to the lowest level product. The level 10 magic energy concentration is already extremely high. In general cities, the level 10 magic energy concentration is already at the highest level, and the entire city needs to be sealed off and guarded. Old Ethan measured the other 4 magical items in the box one by one, and one of the antique pendants had the highest magical concentration, reaching level 5. With such a high concentration of magic energy, I don't know which one with a lack of heart will carry this kind of thing. Wearing this pendant, it will definitely be contaminated into a monster within 2 days. Have you figured out which one you want? Old Ethan asked. Just this second-degree magic energy ore. Simon chose a magic ore with a concentration of level 2. The higher the concentration of magic energy, the higher the value of the item, and it doubles. Simon doesn't have that without money. The key is that he is conducting experiments with magic energy items, and the level 2 concentration of magic energy minerals is almost there. Add a layer of insulation paper to me. Are you sure you only need one? If you give me a discount, I'll buy a few more. When I didn't ask. Simon rolled his eyes and saw that this old man was an iron rooster, not a single penny plucked. Old Ethan took out a piece of paper like tin foil from the safe and wrapped it around the glass cover where the magic ore was located. This type of isolation paper is a special type of paper that can temporarily isolate magical powers. It costs 100 yuan per piece and is only effective for 3 days. Then put it into a wooden box. Then put the remaining 4 magical items back into the box and lock it tightly. I sprayed something in the room again to dispel the overflowing magic energy. After leaving the basement and closing the iron door, old Ethan breathed a sigh of relief and took off his protective suit. Simon also took off his protective suit. By the way, old Ethan, I still need a gun, Simon suddenly said. This is his decision after careful consideration. The outer and lower urban areas are too dangerous. Although he has a shadow ghost, currently his identity as a transcendent is constantly exposed, and he needs a self-defense weapon. A gun is the best choice. Old Ethan's eyes lit up and he said, "Yes, what gun do you want?" "I can't get the latest firearms from the city guard, but I can get their obsolete products. I have the ability, but I don't have that much money. And can that thing be used casually? If it's discovered, I'll definitely get shot." Simon rolled his eyes again. "Let's go, I'll take you to see, you choose for yourself." Old Ethan smiled and didn't say much before taking Simon out of the basement. "I didn't expect him to have a basement here, which is much larger, about 20 square meters. There are various long guns hanging on the wall. Roughly speaking, there are at least 30 of them, and 2 long wooden cabinets are placed on either side. There are large boxes on both sides of the cabinets. Are you interested in these long guns?" Old Ethan casually took a long gun and introduced it. "The Winchester shotgun has a dense distribution of bullets and a huge killing power. With this gun, even if you are blind, you can kill several people with one shot. This gun is too big, I just need a handgun for self-defense," Simon said. Men all like big guns, and Simon is no exception, but he also knows the value of this gun and can't afford it. "Okay," old Ethan put the gun back, feeling somewhat unsatisfied. "Come, take a look at my treasure." Old Ethan put the box away and opened the box on the shelf. Inside was a row of revolvers, big and small, all in outdated styles, some even rusted. Old Ethan then opened the second box, which also contained revolvers, which were much newer. One of the revolvers is surprisingly large. The famous bloodthirsty beast, the Boning Python revolver, is the best revolver in the world. It has tremendous killing power and the best stability. With just one shot, it can open a fist-sized blood hole in a person, which is unlikely to be saved. Old Ethan saw Simon's interest and picked up this unusually large pistol, introducing it. Simon tried it, but the gun was too heavy to lift with one hand. His thin and weak body made it difficult to use. "At a young age, my physical fitness is also very poor. I won't be blamed by a woman, will I choose a suitable one for you?" Simon looked speechless. The third box contains a magazine-style pistol, similar to the pistol in a TV series. He picked out a handgun from inside. The Toka Type 3 police handgun is of medium weight, has good stability, and has good killing power, making it very suitable for beginners to use. Simon tried it and it felt good. Old Ethan's eyes were almost squinting as he smiled and said, "Chenghui costs 2,000 yuan. Old Ethan, you're too dark, right? The rifling on this gun is worn out, obviously a knockout item. You actually want 2,000, you're not at a loss. This is a police model that is very safe and will never explode. Isn't it natural for it to be a bit expensive?" "Forget it, I can't afford it." Simon handed the pistol back in anger. "I think it's too expensive. I'll give you a discount of 19,000. How about that? I saved 100 yuan, but this is a big discount. Don't. Take a look at this gun, it's 80% new." The two of them have always been in the basement, and Simon is desperately bargaining. Finally, I spent 500 yuan to buy a revolver and a box of bullets before giving up. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Hometown Cuisine. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10 Hometown Cuisine. Old Ethan, let's calculate the price. Don't forget to include the deposit for the shadow beast blood I want. Old Ethan took out a piece of paper and a small computer to start calculating. After calculating, he handed the list to Simon. Simon quickly calculated it and found no errors. He took out 2,350 yuan, almost half of it. Old Ethan smiled and took the money, counted it once, and gave Simon the change. "Old Ethan, I bought a lot of things today, and I'm sure I'll buy more from you in the future. I'm a high-quality customer. You don't really want me to get into trouble, do you?" Simon squinted his eyes and smiled. "As long as it's my client, I don't want anything to happen," Old Ethan smiled. Since that's the case, just tell me what the problem was with the magic ore I bought last time. Simon still wants to figure out what the problem was with the magic ore last time. The smile on old Ethan's face immediately disappeared. I can only tell you that it's not clean, it's best to throw it away. I don't know anything else about it. Old Ethan glanced at Simon and said expressionlessly, buying Warcraft Descendant blood and magical items. You should be obsessed with the mysterious side, trying to get involved in it. I've seen many people like you, and I don't know when you'll be contaminated by magical energy and become a monster that's neither human nor ghost. Simon, considering that you have bought me a lot of things, the old man advises you that mysterious things are not something that anyone can touch. That would really kill people. Simon furrowed his brows, and old Ethan was indeed engaged in illegal drug trading. His eyesight was indeed poisonous. Che, buying these things is not what you think. I treat my little treasure very well. If you die, I won't die. It's best if it's like this, otherwise the old man will lose another customer. Old Ethan didn't say anything and left on his own. This old man must know about the issue with magic energy minerals. Should we kidnap him and force him to confess severely? Simon's idea came to mind and was immediately rejected. Old Ethan's trade in prohibited goods is inherently dangerous. Since he was able to establish a foothold in the outer city area and was not taken down by the mafia or the government, it indicates that he has a strong foundation. Although he is an extraordinary person, he is not unparalleled. No matter how skilled his martial arts are, he is afraid of a kitchen knife. If you shoot him with a black gun, Simon will have to hiccup. Suppressing his restlessness, Simon left the antique shop. On the way back, Simon passed by a meat shop and extravagantly spent dozens of yuan to buy over 10 pounds of pork and pork ribs. His body is too thin and weak, he needs to be well nourished. Returning home leisurely, I placed the medicine box in the dark slot and carried the pork to the next door Dorian's house. He doesn't have a kitchen at home and can't cook, so he can only borrow Dorian's kitchen. The door of Dorian's house is double-layered, with an outer layer of wire and a protective door made of iron rods. Many families here will install this type of protective door for safety. The girl who opened the door was a 15 or 16-year-old girl, who was Dorian's eldest daughter, Nancy. Nancy is quite tall, but a bit thin. There are many black spots and some gray marks on the face. In fact, these black spots and gray marks are not innate, but she made them herself. Simon came back one night and happened to meet Nancy going out to pour water. He saw what she was like. She herself is very beautiful and a perfect beauty. But she was born in the wrong place, and the more beautiful the woman is on this chaotic street, the more dangerous it is. Nancy is more sensible than her peers, so she covers up her beauty, makes herself look ordinary, and avoids a lot of trouble. When Nancy saw Simon, her eyebrows furrowed slightly. She had little impression or favor of Simon, and was even more wary of those who came to her door voluntarily. "Nancy, didn't you go to work today?" Simon smiled kindly. The children in the outer city area have to work and help support their families since they are very young. Nancy washes dishes in a restaurant and is not at home during the day. "I'm not feeling well today, so I'm taking a day off." "What's up with you?" Nancy's tone was tough, full of vigilance. "I don't have a kitchen at home, can I borrow your kitchen?" Nancy frowned even more fiercely. "If it's not convenient now, I can come over tonight." "You come in." Nancy hesitated for a moment before opening the door for Simon. "Wait for me a moment." Simon quickly ran back to his own house, took out the pork, locked the door, and arrived at Dorian's house. Nancy was surprised to see so much meat in Simon's hand. "Meat, meat." A crisp childlike voice rang out, and a little girl around 3 years old pointed to pork, bit her fingers, and had a longing in her eyes. A little boy about 5 years old immediately picked up the little girl and walked to the side. He turned back 3 times and looked at the meat in Simon's hand. These 2 children are also Dorian's children, the boy's name is Dame and the girl's name is Rachel. Dorian's life is not good, and meat is expensive. They rarely eat meat, and even if they occasionally buy some, they make minced meat into soup and drink it. At most, they eat some meat flavor. This is almost the norm for civilians in Houston Street or outer city areas. Not eating meat for a long time, Dame and Rachel are both malnourished and look very worried. Dame, Rachel, I need to cook. Can you help me? I will pay you for it, Simon said with a smile. Can you treat me to meat? Dame swallowed his saliva and whispered. Eat meat, eat meat. Rachel applauded happily. Dame, Nancy frowned and rebuked. Dame's neck shrank, he was very afraid of his sister. Nancy, I can't borrow your kitchen for nothing, can I? Besides, Dame and Richie are going to help me. The city law of Fossa states that there will be gains with effort, right? Simon laughed. Nancy looked at her younger siblings with a longing expression on her face, her heart softened, and she didn't say anything more. Nancy, can I ask for your help too? Simon said kindly. Nancy nodded expressionlessly. Nancy took Simon into the kitchen. Dorian's kitchen was small and rudimentary, with a stove and pot that were very similar to Simon's previous flower growers. There were no ingredients in the kitchen, so he saw some vegetables in a basket and the leaves had turned yellow. Nancy, what seasoning do you have at home? Nancy took out a seasoning box from the cabinet and opened it, which contained several types. These seasonings are all very expensive, especially salt. Our family can only add a little at a time, so we can't give them to you. Can't I buy it yet? Simon took out a yellow eagle coin from his pocket and handed it to Nancy. Nancy didn't take it and said, 10 yuan is enough to buy a bag of salt. This little salt in our house is not worth 10 yuan. I also need to use other seasonings, and I'm too lazy to buy them. It's only 10 yuan in total, right? Simon said helplessly. Simon, have you made a fortune? Dame asked with wide eyes as he saw Simon's generosity. Simon chuckled and said, I made a big deal yesterday and made a lot of money. He stuffed the money into Nancy's hand and didn't give her a chance to refuse. Dame, come and help me cook the pot. Leave it to me. Dame was very happy and ran excitedly to the stove. Rachel followed her brother and squeezed beside him, while the two little people pounded firewood and stuffed it under the stove. Dame is very skilled in lighting the firewood, and Rachel also helps to stuff the firewood. She moves skillfully and helps with many tasks at home. Simon found the kitchen knife and cutting board, and then started cutting the meat. The knife was a bit dull and the cutting was a bit slow. Do you want to fry meat? Nancy leaned against the door and asked calmly. No, I want to make a really delicious dish, you'll know later. Simon wanted to make chili fried meat. He would like to make braised pork belly with brown sauce if there were not too many spices here. Simon put the cut fat into a hot pot and began refining. After the oil heated up, he prepared to pour a large plate of sliced meat into it. You're wasting oil, so much oil is enough for 2 weeks, Nancy walked over and stopped Simon. I have a lot of meat slices, how can I stir fry without so much oil? Simon poured the meat slices into the pot, and Nancy looked regretful and heartbroken. Simon started frying the pot with a spatula, humming a tune while frying. It was his first time cooking dishes from his hometown, and he was in a good mood. Simon, what kind of song is this? I can't understand what it means, Dame looked up from under the stove, his face ashen. This is the mysterious language of the East. I hum it myself when I have nothing to do, it sounds good, Simon chuckled. It sounds great. Rachel was very enthusiastic. I'll tell you, with my voice condition, if I go singing, it will definitely sound even better than Domingo and Maria. Domingo and Maria are the most famous singers in the city of Fossa, and even the poor in the lower end know their names. Blow it off, my sister sings even better than you, Dame looked contemptuous. Simon is not shy, Waichier poked out her small head, her face also ashen. Ha ha ha. Simon laughed and soon the chili fried meat was out of the pot, with a large serving. Most of it is sliced meat, with very little green pepper. This is not stir-fried meat with green pepper, it's just stir-fried sliced meat. Put it in a basin, it has a strong aroma. Dame and Waichier were attracted by the fragrance and walked out early from under the stove, with Nancy responsible for cooking the pot. The two little people were grabbing the edge of the pot, staring at the chili fried meat in the pot, non-stop smacking, and Waichier's saliva flowed down. Simon tasted the sliced meat and it tasted good. After so many years of being able to eat the hometown dishes I have made, my heart is filled with a sense of happiness. He placed the basin on the table with satisfaction. Don't stand there, little one. Come and taste it. Dame and Waichier ran over like two little wolves. Dame, Waichier. Nancy stood up, expressionless, and stopped them again. The two little people were so aggrieved that they dared not move. What are you doing? They put in some labor, what's wrong with eating something? Simon frowned and smiled at the two little people. Don't worry about your sister, I'll treat you to eat. They didn't move, eagerly looking at Nancy. I can only eat a little. Nancy was defeated by their pitiful eyes. Two little people nodded excitedly, sat on chairs, their eyes lit up, and carefully inserted meat slices with forks. They ate them with excitement on their faces. Delicious. Someone likes his craft, and Simon is in a good mood. He hums a tune and starts stewing pork ribs. Seeking collection. Requesting recommended tickets. End of this chapter.